Hello, and a warm welcome back to the USA English Podcast. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today for another practical and engaging English lesson. I'm Erica.
And I'm Marco. On this channel, our mission is to help you speak English naturally, confidently, and clearly through real, everyday conversations. Today's topic is something everyone loves to talk about: the weekend.
That's right. Today, we're talking about how to talk about your weekend in English, and we're going to help you stop saying the same boring answer. It was good.
We've all been there. Someone asks, "How was your weekend?" And we say, "It was good," or "It was nice." But there are so many better, more interesting, and more natural ways to describe your weekend.
And that's exactly what we're going to teach you today. We'll give you a wide range of vocabulary, phrases, and expressions to describe your weekend in a way that sounds natural, engaging, and native-like.
We'll cover different types of weekends: relaxing weekends, busy weekends, fun weekends, adventurous weekends, and even boring weekends. You'll have the perfect words for every situation.
And we'll give you plenty of example conversations so you can practice and feel confident using these phrases in real life.
If you enjoy learning with us, please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you never miss a lesson.
All right, Marco, let's get started. So, Marco, how was your weekend?
Oh, my weekend was absolutely fantastic. I had such a great time. I went hiking with some friends on Saturday, and the weather was perfect, sunny but not too hot. We walked for about 3 hours and then had a picnic at the top of the hill.
That sounds amazing. I love hiking. What did you do on Sunday?
On Sunday, I took it easy. I slept in until 9, which was wonderful. Then I had a lazy breakfast, read a book, and watched a movie in the evening. It was the perfect balance. Active on Saturday, relaxed on Sunday. How about you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was quite relaxing. On Saturday, I stayed home and did some cooking. I tried a new recipe for a pasta dish, and it turned out really delicious. I also did some cleaning and organizing. On Sunday, I met a friend for coffee, and we caught up on everything. It was low-key, but lovely.
That sounds like a perfect weekend. You know, the conversation we just had is exactly the kind of conversation people have on Monday mornings. How was your weekend is one of the most common questions in English.
Absolutely. And that's why today's lesson is so important. Let's dive into our main lesson and teach our listeners how to talk about their weekends with more interesting and natural vocabulary.
So, Erica, let's start with the most basic question. What's wrong with saying, "It was good"?
There's nothing grammatically wrong with "it was good," but it's boring. It doesn't give any information about what you did, how you felt, or what made your weekend special.
Exactly. It's like saying, "I'm fine" when someone asks how you are. It's safe, but it doesn't create connection. When you give a more detailed answer, you invite conversation.
So today, we're going to give you a vocabulary toolkit for describing every type of weekend.
Let's start with positive and exciting weekends.
If your weekend was amazing, you can say it was incredible, or it was absolutely fantastic, or it was awesome.
Another great option is "I had a blast." That means you had a really fun time.
You can also say it was a weekend to remember, or I couldn't have asked for a better weekend.
Now let's talk about relaxing and peaceful weekends.
If your weekend was calm and restful, you can say it was very relaxing, or it was wonderfully peaceful.
Another option is "It was exactly what I needed," or "I feel so refreshed after this weekend."
You can also say it was a low-key weekend, or I just took it easy.
Now let's talk about busy and productive weekends.
If you got a lot done, you can say it was a productive weekend, or I was very busy, but in a good way.
Another option is "I got so much done," or "I crossed a lot of things off my to-do list."
You can also say it was a productive and fulfilling weekend.
Now let's talk about adventurous and active weekends.
If you did something exciting, you can say, it was an adventurous weekend, or I had an action-packed weekend.
Another option is I went on an adventure, or I tried something new.
You can also say, I explored a new place, or I spent the weekend outdoors.
Now let's talk about boring or disappointing weekends.
Not every weekend is amazing. If your weekend was boring, you can say, it was pretty uneventful, or it was a bit dull.
Another option is nothing special happened, or it was just an ordinary weekend.
You can also say, I didn't do much, or it was a quiet weekend, which was fine.
Now let's talk about funny or unexpected weekends.
If something unexpected happened, you can say, it was quite eventful, or something unexpected happened.
Another option is it was a crazy weekend, or it didn't go as planned.
You can also say, it was memorable, that's for sure, or it was full of surprises.
Now let's give specific vocabulary for different weekend activities.
If you spent time with friends, you can say, I caught up with some friends, or I hung out with my friends.
Another option is I spent quality time with loved ones, or I had a great time with my friends.
If you went out, you can say, I went out for dinner, or I went to a party, or I went to a concert.
If you stayed home, you can say I stayed in and relaxed, or I had a cozy weekend at home.
If you traveled, you can say, I went on a weekend trip, or I took a short getaway.
If you did chores, you can say I caught up on housework, or I did some cleaning and organizing.
If you rested, you can say, I slept in, or I took a nap, or I just rested all weekend.
Now let's learn how to describe the weather during your weekend.
You can say, the weather was beautiful, or it was sunny and warm.
Another option is it was a bit rainy, but it didn't ruin the weekend, or the weather was perfect for outdoor activities.
You can also say, it was a cold weekend, so I stayed indoors, or it was a lovely spring weekend.
Now let's learn how to describe food during your weekend.
You can say, I had a delicious meal, or we tried a new restaurant.
Another option is I cooked a big Sunday lunch, or I had a nice brunch with friends.
You can also say, I tried a new recipe, or I treated myself to some good food.
Now let's practice some full answers to how was your weekend?
Here's a full answer for an amazing weekend. It was absolutely fantastic. I went hiking with my friends on Saturday. The weather was perfect and the views were breathtaking. On Sunday, I relaxed at home and watched movies. It was the perfect combination of active and restful.
That's a great answer. Here's another one for a relaxing weekend. It was so relaxing. I didn't do much, just stayed home, read a book, and cooked a nice meal. I also slept in both days. It was exactly what I needed.
And here's a busy weekend answer. It was a productive weekend. I got so much done around the house. I cleaned, organized, and even did some gardening. I also caught up on a few work projects. It was busy, but I feel good about everything I accomplished.
And here's a boring weekend answer. It was pretty uneventful, to be honest. I didn't do much. I just stayed home, watched TV, and relaxed. Sometimes it's nice to have a quiet weekend.
And here's an adventurous weekend answer. It was an action-packed weekend. On Saturday, I went to a concert and then to a party. On Sunday, I went on a day trip to the beach. It was a lot of fun, but I'm exhausted now.
Now, let's talk about how to ask follow-up questions. This is how you keep a conversation going.
After someone says their weekend was amazing, you can ask, what did you do? Or where did you go?
You can also ask, who did you go with? Or what was your favorite part?
And if they say they relaxed, you can ask, what did you watch? Or what did you cook?
These follow-up questions show genuine interest and make the conversation more engaging.
Now let's talk about common mistakes when talking about the weekend.
One mistake is using the present tense instead of the past. For example, saying, I go hiking instead of I went hiking.
Another mistake is forgetting to use time markers. For example, saying, I went hiking without saying on Saturday or this weekend.
And another mistake is giving an answer that's too short. For example, just saying, "It was good," and then stopping.
So always try to add at least one detail: what you did, who you were with, or how you felt.
Now, let's do a longer practice conversation about the weekend. Let me start with a detailed story about my weekend.
Great. I'll ask you questions, and you can answer in detail.
Sounds perfect.
So, Marco, how was your weekend?
My weekend was absolutely wonderful. On Saturday, I went to a small town about an hour away from here. I went with a couple of friends. We visited a local market, had lunch at a cozy cafe, and walked around the town. The weather was beautiful. On Sunday, I stayed home and caught up on some reading. I also cooked a big Sunday lunch. It was a perfect balance of activity and relaxation.
That sounds lovely. What did you have for lunch?
I made a roast chicken with vegetables. It turned out really well. I also made a dessert, a chocolate cake. It was delicious.
That sounds incredible. I love cooking on weekends.
What about you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was quite relaxing. On Saturday, I stayed home and did some cleaning. I also watched a movie. On Sunday, I met a friend for brunch. We went to a nice place and had a long chat. Then I went for a walk in the park. It was a simple but lovely weekend.
That sounds like a perfect weekend. Sometimes simple is best.
Exactly. Now let's talk about how to talk about weekends in different situations.
In a casual conversation with friends, you can say, "I had such a good weekend. I went out with friends and had a blast."
In a formal or professional setting, you can say, "I had a quiet weekend. I focused on resting and preparing for the week ahead."
In a job interview, if someone asks about your weekend, you can say, "I spent the weekend catching up on some reading and preparing for the upcoming week."
And in a classroom, you can say, "I visited my family this weekend. It was really nice to see everyone."
Now let's move to our extended vocabulary breakdown.
First word, weekend. This is Saturday and Sunday. For example, I love the weekend.
Relaxing means calm and restful. For example, I had a relaxing weekend.
Productive means getting a lot done. For example, it was a productive weekend.
Adventurous means exciting and full of new experiences. For example, I had an adventurous weekend.
Eventful means full of interesting events. For example, it was an eventful weekend.
Uneventful means nothing interesting happened. For example, my weekend was uneventful.
Low-key means relaxed and not intense. For example, it was a low-key weekend.
Action-packed means full of activities. For example, I had an action-packed weekend.
Getaway means a short trip. For example, I went on a weekend getaway.
Brunch is a combination of breakfast and lunch. For example, I had brunch with friends.
Now let's give more example sentences for describing weekends.
I went on a road trip with my friends. I visited my grandmother. I explored a new city.
More examples. I stayed home and binge-watched a series. I went to the beach. I attended a wedding.
I went shopping. I spent time with my family. I went to a museum.
I went camping. I did some gardening. I took a long walk.
Now let's talk about how to describe food on the weekend.
I had a delicious meal at a new restaurant. I cooked a big dinner. I had a cozy breakfast at home.
More food examples. I treated myself to ice cream. I went out for coffee. I had a barbecue with friends.
Now let's talk about how to describe who you spent the weekend with.
I spent the weekend with my family. I hung out with some close friends. I was alone, and it was nice.
More examples. I visited my parents. I went out with my colleagues. I spent time with my partner.
Now let's give some full example descriptions of different types of weekends.
Here's a full answer for an amazing weekend. My weekend was absolutely incredible. I went to the mountains with my friends. We hiked for hours, and the views were breathtaking. We also had a picnic at the top. On Sunday, I relaxed and watched movies. It was the perfect weekend.
Here's a full answer for a relaxing weekend. I had a wonderfully relaxing weekend. I stayed home, read a book, and cooked a nice meal. I also slept in both days. I feel so refreshed now.
Here's a full answer for a busy weekend. It was a very busy but productive weekend.
I cleaned the house, did laundry, and organized my closet. I also did some work for next week. I didn't have much free time, but I feel good about everything I got done.
Here's a full answer for a fun weekend. I had such a fun weekend. On Saturday, I went to a concert with my friends. The music was amazing, and we danced all night. On Sunday, we had a brunch together, and then went for a walk in the park. It was a perfect weekend.
Here's a full answer for a boring weekend. To be honest, my weekend was pretty boring. I didn't do much, just stayed home, watched TV, and relaxed. I didn't see anyone. It was quiet, but sometimes that's what you need.
Here's a full answer for an adventurous weekend. It was an adventurous weekend. I went to a new city and explored everything. I walked around the old town, visited a museum, and tried some local food. It was so exciting.
Now, let's give some tips for improving your weekend storytelling.
Tip 1. Use a variety of adjectives. Don't just say good. Say amazing, fantastic, relaxing, productive, or eventful.
Tip 2. Add details. Say what you did, where you went, and who you were with.
Tip 3. Describe your feelings. Say how you felt, happy, refreshed, tired, or excited.
Tip 4. Use time markers. Say on Saturday, on Sunday, or this weekend.
Tip 5. Practice with a friend. Ask each other about your weekends and practice answering.
Tip 6. Listen to native speakers. Notice how they describe their weekends and copy their patterns.
Now let's do a conversation practice for different levels.
Let's start with an A1 conversation.
A. How was your weekend?
It was nice. I went to the park. I played with my dog.
A. Was it sunny?
Yes, the weather was beautiful.
Now let's do an A2 conversation.
A. How was your weekend?
B. It was really good. On Saturday, I went shopping with my friends. On Sunday, I stayed home and watched a movie.
A. What movie did you watch?
B. I watched a comedy. It was very funny. Now let's do a B1 conversation.
A. How was your weekend?
B. It was a lovely weekend. On Saturday, I went to the beach with my family. The weather was perfect. We swam in the sea and had a picnic. On Sunday, I visited my grandmother. We had a nice chat and she cooked my favorite meal.
That sounds wonderful. What did she cook?
She made a traditional pasta dish. It was delicious. Now let's do a B2 conversation.
A. How was your weekend?
B. It was absolutely fantastic. I went on a weekend trip to the countryside. We stayed in a small cottage near a lake. On Saturday, we went for a long hike and explored the surrounding area. The landscape was stunning. On Sunday, we rented a boat and spent the afternoon on the lake. It was such a refreshing and peaceful experience. I feel completely recharged now.
That sounds incredible. I'd love to do something like that. What was the best part?
Honestly, the best part was just being away from the city and enjoying the peace and quiet. It was exactly what I needed.
That's a beautiful answer.
Now let's summarize all the key points from today's lesson.
First, avoid saying just, "it was good." Use more descriptive and interesting vocabulary.
Second, use different adjectives for different types of weekends. Amazing, relaxing, productive, adventurous, eventful, boring, or peaceful.
Third, add details about what you did, where you went, and who you were with.
Fourth, describe your feelings and how the weekend made you feel.
Fifth, use time markers like on Saturday and on Sunday.
Sixth, practice with real conversations.
Seventh, ask follow-up questions to keep the conversation going.
And finally, don't be afraid to be honest. Even a boring weekend can be described in an interesting way.
Now, we want to hear from you. This is our favorite part.
Yes, we love reading your comments. Our question of the day is, how was your weekend?
I'll go first. My weekend was relaxing. I stayed home, read a book, and cooked a nice meal. It was exactly what I needed.
That sounds lovely. My weekend was active and fun. I went hiking with friends and had a great time outdoors.
See, we have different answers, and that's okay. The important thing is that we used interesting vocabulary.
So viewers, we want to know about you. How was your weekend?
You can write something like, "My weekend was amazing. I went to the beach and swam in the ocean." Or, "My weekend was relaxing. I stayed home and watched movies." Or, "My weekend was busy. I cleaned the house and did laundry."
Please tell us in the comments. Write a short answer and practice your English with us.
So please share your answer. We'd really love to read it.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We hope this lesson helps you talk about your weekend with more confidence and more interesting vocabulary.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up and click the subscribe button and the little bell. That way, you won't forget to join us for our next lesson.
You are all great students, and we're very happy to learn with you. Keep practicing. Remember, every weekend has a story worth telling.
Yes. Don't say, "It was good." Say something more interesting. Share your stories.
Have a wonderful day, evening, and night wherever you are.
Take care, keep learning, and keep speaking English.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. See you in the next lesson.